Hey guys, Pastor here, back with an update for PSO2 NGS. So today is June 14th, and with this week, we got more of a combat focused in comparison to the creative spaces from last week. So to start off, we have a new enemy type, the Starless, which has come from space to destroy us, I guess. And they're very similar to the Dolls enemies that we've been facing this entire time. So the Dolls enemies were kind of like based on these guys, so it's kind of like makes sense that these guys are similar in terms of like their attacking, but they aren't like a carbon copy exactly. So when I was facing them in game, I noticed that like half of their move set is pretty much identical, but they have another like half where it's like completely changed, where they can actually put things on the field to mess with like your movement. They can also drain your photon power. They can put a status on you that lowers your maximum HP. I think it's called like injured or something like that. So they're actually quite a bit different from the Doll's enemies. They're a little bit harder to face. With these though, you can pretty much use the same tactics as before with the Dolls when you're facing them. Just pretty much attack the weak points on wherever they're at. Some of these have like additional weak points in comparison to like their Doll's version. So like with this Didal one here, you still have to like attack the center points, but they have like a weak point on the shoulder there that does like extra attacks. The Nogleth version of the Starless has like an additional one on like its arm, and then there's like a new Bujin variant that has like different moves, but pretty much like acts the same where you just attack it. But yeah, it's like different enough. I think that it's okay, but still kind of is like, it would have been better if we had completely new enemies, but you know, it is what it is. It kind of goes with the lore of the game right now. But for what these guys drop, they drop several new things. One of them being the new 9-star rarity Tisah weapon series. So with these, there's several different kinds of potentials in them, and you can kind of focus farm them in different areas. But do keep in mind that these are insanely rare to drop, almost kind of like Ruggeds when like Kavaris dropped, or like Relics when Retem was a thing. So if you do manage to get any of these, they're probably worth a lot right now, but as we move on with the game, we'll get more 9 stars added into the game, like probably in the seasonal event next month with the 11th anniversary, or in August with the new kind of combat modes that we'll be getting then. But taking a look at these weapons themselves, they have 3 different potentials. One is for the melee, one is for the ranged, and one is on all of the technique weapons. So for the melee thing here, we have Incandescent Unit. So when you get this, it gives you photon power plus 15 on a critical hit, and that can happen every 10 seconds. And then there's just like increases the potency as you go up to level 6, up to 36%. Just with this, like once you put it on, it takes like 10 seconds to start activating that critical hit as well. So you can't just like switch to it, get it, and then switch back to something else. You're gonna have to like keep using it to get that benefit. But for its max power at plus 70 now, it's 992 attack power, which is pretty crazy. Just for reference, the Neos Astrian at plus 70, which was the previous best weapon, only goes up to 894 attack, and it has like a similar kind of potential in terms of like potency there. So these new 9 stars are just way better than what we've had before. It's just unfortunate that they are so rare and there's no alternative to them. I guess one saving grace with these new 9-star weapons, though, is that they are sellable. So if people do start getting them and want to give it to others, like sell them for like lots of Mosetta, like you can get it that way instead of getting it to drop yourself. But it's probably going to be very pricey, especially in the beginning here with nothing else available and so little supply. But looking at the rest of the potentials here on like the ranged one here, there's Dance Obscura unit. So this one's a little bit interesting. It has like a lower potency, but it gives plus 1% potency every 5 seconds to a max of plus 5%. So you might be thinking with this, it gives you like 37% potency overall, because on the level 6, plus 32%, plus the 5%, 37, which is only 1% more than this other weapon here. So it doesn't sound too good, but because it's a separate instance of potency, it actually multiplies together, so it's a little bit more than 37%. So it's actually pretty good for if you're just focusing DPS-wise, but there's the caveat of minus 1% bonus potency when you take damage. So it's a little bit like the Gunblaze series, so you want to avoid taking damage here, otherwise you get less DPS. But this only affects that bonus potency that you get from this here, so if you have any accumulated, it minuses 1% when you take an instance of damage. Now let's move into the final potential of this Tisah series. With all the technique weapons in here, these have the receptive unit, and it's kind of similar in potency to the melee weapons with 36% at the level 6 version, but the PP recovery is a little bit different. So this gives offensive PP recovery plus 15%, natural PP recovery speed plus 20%, and damage resistance plus 30%. That's actually pretty huge, but because of that, there's a negative here. So if you take damage, you get minus 30 photon power, which is actually kind of huge in the middle of combat. But with all these bonuses here, it takes 10 seconds after being equipped to take into effect with all these here. You can't just like switch to and from with it. You kind of have to like stick with it before you get those bonuses or like even the penalty. So now that we've looked at all of them, I think they're all pretty strong, and they kind of just fit whatever kind of build or class that you're using. So for these, you can like multi-weapon into them to get whatever potential that you want, essentially. So if you want to still use like a sword, for instance, but want like the rifle's potential, you can have this be the base weapon, and this just kind of attaches a material weapon when multi-weaponing, and you'll get this potential on both. But for what I would choose out of these three, just based on like my builds, like probably this one for like DPS, this is going to give you just more straight damage. You just got to avoid the damage at the same time, or like counter or whatever. And then this one over here seems like pretty nice, but because of that 10-second cooldown, only getting 15 photon power every like 10 seconds basically, it's kind of like hard to recommend. I would say this is probably like the worst one, because like over here you get offensive PP recovery and the natural PP recovery speed and the damage resistance. I guess this is like the negative kind of like balances it out a little bit, but yeah, I would say like this is good for damage. This is just the better version of this, but I don't know, maybe if you really don't want that minus 30 PP negative there, then you can go for this one instead. But moving on to other drops that these Starless have, there's a couple of more things. There's an augment exclusive to the Starless called the Starl Soul. You can get these pretty much like from any Starless enemies, and these aren't like too great by themselves because they only give potency plus 3%, and there's like other souls that are easier to get out there that just do more than that. But these will be a component for later. There just isn't anything in the game yet. There is the Dual Quest Phase 2 coming up, I believe next week, where you're going to face like Starless in there and get dual fusions if you can complete it. So with those dual fusions, I think they combine with these Starl Souls and maybe some other things to make something that is better, like a 4% potency or higher capsule with some additional stats. So we just have to wait and see for that, but this will be combined with something, because that's what they said in the headline. Then we have new enhancement fodder in the game, Gold Prim Sword 2s and Gold Prim Armor 2s. So these can be obtained in new ranks of the combat zones in Alio that are level 70. So those house the Starless and other enemies from before. But with these, they completely change how enhancement kind of like goes, because when you look at how much these give, they give 100,000 experience when used as enhancement material. To compare this to what was before, the original Gold Prim sword here only gave 450, so you can see the massive difference there. So even with plus 20s or plus 30s, these are like 10 times better, 20 times better than what we had before. So you're pretty much going to need these for upgrading from now on, because they're just like so much better. It's going to help you with like your Meseta cost. But these like over time are like pretty easy to obtain. You just need to go into those combat zones, just keep killing bosses, and you'll get these over time. It's just right now, because it's so new, people are just like buying them up like crazy to enhance to plus 70 with these weapons, and going from plus 60 to plus 70 now takes so much XP because of these new items. So originally for like enhancement from like 1 to 60, it was pretty easy. They didn't take too much enhancement experience. But now going from plus 60 just to plus 61 takes 1 million experience. So it takes 10 of these, or 5 of them if you do a great success. So it's just so much more XP, and every single level takes that same amount. So pretty much you need 50 of these in total, just from plus 60 to 70, with great successes all the way, or 100 with no great successes. It's kind of ridiculous, but it does give quite a big attack increase, and it gives you a new slot when you go from plus 60 to plus 61. it goes from, let's see, I think plus 60, yeah, 761 attack power to 894 on the Neos Astrian. So that is a massive bump in damage, but I just don't know if it's going to be worth it as much if you do it for your armor, as that only gives you more defense, which, I mean, kind of helps. It's like better than nothing, I guess, but I would almost recommend like just not doing it for armor right now, or just limit breaking them and just enhancing them to plus 61 for the extra augment slot until we get something better later. For limit breaking, it just goes pretty much the same way as before, where you're gonna need arms refiner 1s and 2s. There's no extra material this time. But yeah, for the 8-star weapons, to go from plus 60 to, you know, the plus 70 stuff, it takes 8 arms refiner 1s and 4 of the 2s. And then for like a 7-star, it takes 6 and 3 respectively. Also in the item lab, there's another way to get this new enhancement fodder in the exchange enhancement materials, and then other enhancement materials section here. You can get these gold print sword 2s and the armor 2s for 50 grinders a pop, and you can do that 10 times per week each. So I guess like that's an extra way to get these, which I mean I would do anyways because I'm not really using grinders much, because it's like I'm just getting way more than I'm using, so it's like, why not? You can also just grab these even if you don't plan on enhancing, because these are selling like quite fast on the market right now. One more thing that drops that's noteworthy from these new enemies in the combat zones is this Ale Sovern. So this by itself is just a potency +1 capsule, so you're not going to use this on your equipment because it's just really bad. But this combines with something else that's really good, and that's actually in the item lab as well. So if we go to the exchange enhancement materials augment capsule, it's this top option here, this Higheal Domina. So with this, it gives 3% potency, 2% potency floor, 4 photon power, and 10 HP. So it's basically just like a kind of like a Dreadkeeper slash like Alt Secreta hybrid kind of thing. It's just like better overall because of the potency floor, and all the additional stats. But it takes 30 of these Ale Sovereigns and 100 of each of the combat zone notes in Aleo. So the Magnus note, Lab note, and Wrestler note. For these Ale Sovereigns, they're not too rare, but not too common. They're kind of just somewhere in the middle, like an uncommon drop, you could say. Before these, they just drop from anything inside these level 70 ranks of the combat zones in Aleo, and you can just get them over time to eventually get these. I would definitely recommend this, probably for your like 6th slot right now, that you could be getting from you know, the plus 61 with your gear, or you can just use it to like replace something else you might be using right now. Let's continue though with the rest of the updates on the website here. So moving on to the next thing, there is this Giga Strugment exchange that I mentioned last week because it was in the game already. But this is going to be tied to, you know, your level 75 increase that we're getting. So there's 5 more levels to then face Gigantix in the open world in Aleo that are now level 79. So there's Starless Gigantix that spawn after you kill like Doll's Gigantix during storms, and then also these recon gigants in north, west, and south Aleo, just not central, and you can face these to get Giga Strugments for this exchange shop. So just to reiterate what was like inside, just go to the item trader here and click Giga Strugment Exchange, and you can get Defi Phase 1 capsules, you can get Gigas 4s, which I highly recommend getting those, the Photon Chunk 2s if you need those, and then just like a whole bunch of weapon camos, but they just cost like 500 Giga Strugments, which is actually quite a lot, because the bosses I found only drop 3 every time you kill one, and then like every recon pack that I faced, it seemed like it was kind of like a chance drop, but I was getting like 1 per recon pack, so it's going to take a long time to get like anything in here. So like a single Gigas 4 capsules is going to take like 3 bosses and a recon pack just to, you know, get the 1 there, and there's like 10 per week that you can get of each. And then for like the weapon camos, as said, 500, so that's going to take like 170 bosses if you want 1 of the camos. So a long time that SEGA wants you to, you know, kill these Gigantix for. I don't know if like I'll go for many of these personally, because I mean, I've been farming Gigantix for 2 years. I don't know if I want to do it more and more, like so much to get these, but like it's there if you want it now. Going back here, there is that level 75 increase as mentioned before. With those 5 extra levels, it's not too hard as per usual with leveling up in this game. It shouldn't take you too long, maybe like an hour if you're just farming Combat Zone. or just like, I don't know, like 10 minutes or something if you're doing like yellow triggers. It's super easy to get that level point if you're already level 70. But tied with this, there's more high rank sectors as mentioned before as well, with the Alio region only right now, but there's new ranks for Mount Magnus, Vanford, and Wrestle Forest that are all level 70 that have the Starless inside, and in those they pretty much just drop everything that I mentioned earlier in the video, but they added some new things across Alio and also some in the combat zones. There's these skylifters that you can use that actually like launch you horizontally, kind of like the springs that are used in the creative spaces. To show how it works, you basically just walk into it and it launches you quite far. It's actually kind of nice traversing across the different zones here in Alio, and you can also find them in the combat zones to get from trial to trial easier as well. Then for another mechanic added to the game, there's this Hindras Lily that's only in the Wrestle Forest right now. Basically, this shoots at you with its bullets when it's in this kind of phase, and it does like a decent amount of damage. But basically, if you just attack it, it will eventually explode and like build up and explode there, and it'll do significant damage to enemies nearby. So just like a nice little mechanic to go for if there's like a group of enemies near it. Next, we have a much requested feature, which is featured item drops when you hover over certain zones. So this is only for like the new kind of combat zone ranks or the new ranks of the UQs, which got added as well. But for these, they show like the significant drops in those areas. So when you hover over, it shows up above that it shows like the Tisah series, the Ale Sovern, and the Gold Prim Sword 2 there. But if you press like Shift or like whatever button it says here for controller, you can actually go into the details, and it actually shows that only certain Tisah weapons drop in Wrestle Forest. So like the Saber, Katana, Rifle, Talus, Harmonizer only are chance drops there, and then like if you open that, it shows the armor too. But this is kind of like the same for the Vanford lab, where there's only certain weapons: sword, knuckles, blades, launcher, bow, rod, and then like the rest in Mount Magnus here. So you want to farm certain spots if you want to go for a certain weapon, just to have a chance at the one that you really want, instead of farming just Vanford just because it's like the easiest one to farm or something like that. But this also applies to the UQs, like I said here, which all of the UQs of their highest rank that got added here in Alio, which is Darkfall's Interception and the Battle of Halfia Lake, they can drop all of the 9 stars right now, this Tisah series. They can drop Arms Refiner 2s now, as well as those Gold Prim Sword 2s and Armor 2s there. But yeah, for the Darkfall's Interception, the new rank is level 75. This also applies to the Darkfall's Interception R.2 in the Trigger Quest, so you can, maybe that's the better chance to get the 9-star series. I haven't really tested it out myself. But for the Halfia Lake one, there's no new rank. It just got bumped up to level 75. So watch out for that, because I tried it at like level 71, because it like popped as soon as like maintenance happened. And I wasn't quite ready. And it's a significant difference. It's kind of based on like having plus 70 weapons and more augments and just being that level 75 to kind of like match. So at first it might be quite difficult in comparison to what it was not too long ago. Also on the topic of these urgent quests and trigger quests, they made the Command Doll Suppression Op, Next Fair Suppression Op, and the Mining Rig Defense Alio no longer occur as urgent quests, and now you can only do them as trigger quests in the quest counter. So just keep in mind of that, and they don't have like any new ranks, so they're kind of just like outdated content at this point. Only farm them for like titles or cosmetics that you may want from them if you're missing them. But to the next thing, there's this new object, Myenin. This allows you to get Photon Chunk 2 A's and B's from them every single day, and they pretty much spawn in like similar spots. They weren't exactly the same every day, but they're pretty much like in and around the general area. So in North Alio, it's like right here next to the Alta Lani Plateau. With West Alio, it's kind of on the coast here on the Cryono Cliffs, like in between the yellow trigger and this teleporter here. And then in South Alio, it's in that cave, like right about here, kind of a little bit north of this Balflow Falls West teleporter. And then for Central Alio, it's right in between the two mountain peaks, just kind of resting underneath there. But yeah, for these, there's only 1 per spot in each of the exploration zones, so 4 in total per day, and they only give 1 Photon Chunk 2 each, so not too much. I did notice that it was like 2 A's and 2 B's each day. I don't know if that's like a normal occurrence, but that's what happened for me. But also with these, when you destroy them, they give like a few of the other minerals, like monotite, dolomite, even like photon scales sometimes. But basically, those photon chunk 2s are the main focus if you want to potential 6 your weapons. That's pretty much it for like the main content this week, but there was a couple of scratches added. There's this accessory collection, June 23, which is a whole bunch of base game accessories, but it's kind of like the more popular ones, like certain wings, this like plaid shirt, tails and ears, different caps, and of course, you know, those bosoms there. Oh yes, beautiful. You gotta have all the bosoms in the game. But just like a whole bunch of stuff like that people were kind of going crazy for in the past. But then there's this AC support item select June 23. This has the new XD capsules, which there's kind of a different variety here. There's these parfait ones, which are all potency capsules, which do kind of like the usual stuff with the stamina and the spirit version, blah, 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 the mixed ones, and the deft ones, which is probably going to be the most expensive. That gives 4% potency and some amount of potency floor with each one and like the respective stats. But then there are these hybrid ones, which work like the addies from before, which are just 2 potency types. So if you don't want to go for all 3, you can just go for these here. They'll be a little bit cheaper, but they work pretty much like the same way, where they have like different substats based on which one, like the stamina and, you know, the spirit, etc. They just got to watch for the 2 potency types there. But also in this scratch, it has like the usual bonus items, like skipping limit breaks for certain things, skipping the potential unlocks, blah, blah, blah. What's kind of funny, though, is when you look at the bottom here, they still have the old fodder. There isn't any like new NEXP armor 2s or weapon 2s, so getting these is actually insanely bad because of what they added to the game, because these only give 5,000 XP while the new things give 100,000, as we saw before. So if you get these, it just that just really sucks, and it kind of, you know, has a higher chance of happening too, and you're spending real money on this, by the way. So yeah, just congrats to SEGA for doing that for you. But yeah, with the XD capsules inside, they're pretty much in the same category as the Addy capsules or the pay-to-win capsules from before. So you can't have both XDs and the Addies on the same piece of gear, so keep that in mind. Yeah, there's basically only like one other thing with this update, and that was a new campaign here celebrating more than 11 million Arks worldwide. Woo! So yeah, for the next like month here till July 11th, if you log in, you can get 100 SG and 10 special scratch tickets, which you claim by just going to the system menu in game, and then going to get campaign items, and then it should be in here in your receive item account. But yeah, that's pretty much everything with this update, which I don't know how I feel about it. Like, it's kind of nice for some of these features, like, oh yeah, we're getting more things to strive for, we'll, you know, go do more ranks, get some 9-star gear, and I'll get more, but I don't know, it feels like I'm just doing the same thing as I did at the very launch of this game. We're back in Alio, the first region, doing the same exact thing. We did these combat zones already, you know, for many moons. It took, what, like 6 months until we got Retem? So that was a long period of time, and we already been here a second time, if some of you remember that. After Retem, we went back to Alio for a few levels, and then, you know, we're doing open world Gigantix farming again, which we also did at the launch of the game. It was like a couple weeks after launch where they introduced those into the game. So I'm just doing the same exact thing, just all over again, and it just doesn't feel good to me, because not enough has changed. Like, there's a little bit of flavor added. Like, there's the Giga Strugments, which gives a little bit more guaranteed rewards with the open world Gigantix there. There's like the new like Lily thing in the Wrestle Forest, but it's just not enough of a change to feel good to me as a veteran player. Like, I'm sure as like a new player, this is like completely fine because you haven't done this before, or at least not for a very long period of time. But if we're going to go through this whole cycle again of like Alio, Retem, Kavaris, Stia, I just don't think I could stand it. I just feel like it's going to feel terrible. My only hope left is for August, which is going to have all those new quest modes, which the ultra high difficulty quests, as well as that randomized element quest, which kind of sounds like challenge mode or some sort of like exploration thing, and like Lucille is what they mentioned, the floating island. So that's like the only thing that I'm like holding out for, and if that doesn't turn out to be good, I don't know how this game is going to go for the rest of its life. Let me know what you guys think of this update though, and I'll see you in the next one. Peace.